The alien woman warned, "If you kiss me, human, I will kill you." I kissed her anyway. Captain Darius Wells was not easily intimidated, but standing at the threshold of the grand hall on the planet Nevrith, he couldn't help but feel the weight of his mission. The alien planet loomed before him, its vast red skies streaked with gold, an unfamiliar world with an unfamiliar culture. This was a crucial diplomatic visit, one that could shape the future of humanity's relationship with the Nevrithians, a powerful and mysterious alien race. The Nevrithians had been secretive for years, their empire hidden in the shadows of the galaxy. When humanity first made contact, it was with a mix of awe and fear. The Nevrithians were technologically advanced and had a reputation for being fierce warriors, their armies known for their strength and ruthlessness. But it was their leader, the one they called Seraphine, who made Darius' heart beat a little faster. Seraphine was a general, the embodiment of power and authority. She had led her people through countless battles, and her name was whispered in fear across the galaxy. Despite the secrecy of the Nevrithian Empire, rumors had spread, rumors of her beauty, her strength, and her cold, unforgiving nature. Darius had heard the warnings from his fellow diplomats, the ones who had worked on the negotiations before him. "If you anger Seraphine, she won't hesitate to kill you." He had laughed it off at first, thinking it was just a warning about her temper. But now, standing in the grand hall of her palace, he couldn't deny the nervous tension in the air. As he stepped forward, the ornate doors of the hall creaked open, revealing an enormous chamber. The walls were lined with ancient symbols and rich tapestries, each one telling the story of Nevrith's bloody history. The scent of incense filled the air, and the soft glow of violet lights illuminated the space. At the far end of the room stood Seraphine, her back straight, her presence commanding. She was tall, even by Nevrithian standards, and her posture exuded confidence and power. Her armor gleamed in the low light, intricate and beautiful, yet deadly. Darius couldn't help but notice how it seemed to be a part of her, as if she had never taken it off in her entire life. Her long, silver hair cascaded down her back like a river of light, contrasting against the dark, metallic tones of her suit. But it wasn't her appearance that caught his attention. It was the coldness in her eyes, like a predator watching its prey. As Darius approached, Seraphine's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. She spoke first, her voice as smooth as the surface of an alien lake, yet cold as the stars themselves. "You are the human they've sent, Captain Wells?" Her words were sharp, almost accusing. "Yes, General Seraphine. I'm here to negotiate the terms of the treaty between your people and humanity," Darius replied, keeping his voice steady despite the intensity of her gaze. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, human," she said, stepping closer. Her movement was swift and graceful, like a predator closing in on its prey. "If you fail, it will not just be your life at stake. The lives of billions will be affected. I am the one who will decide your fate, and do not mistake kindness for weakness." Darius held her gaze, refusing to back down. He had faced dangerous situations before, and this wasn't the first time he had met a leader who used fear as a weapon. But there was something different about Seraphine. Something that made even his experienced hands tremble just a little. "I understand the weight of the responsibility, General," he said, his voice firm. "But I also know that diplomacy can achieve what war cannot. I am here to find common ground, not to challenge your strength." Seraphine gave a small, almost imperceptible smile, though it was far from friendly. "You humans are all the same," she said, her eyes gleaming with something dangerous. "You think your words can change the course of history. But words will not save you when you face the reality of the Nevrithian Empire." For a moment, Darius was struck by her presence. She didn't just talk about war, she was a living testament to it. Her eyes held the weight of countless battles, of lives lost and victories won. And yet there was something else there, something that made him wonder if there was more to Seraphine than the ruthless warrior she projected to the galaxy. The tension in the room was thick, like a storm cloud ready to burst. But Darius wasn't intimidated. He had faced worse. "I believe that, General," he said, "but I also believe that humanity and the Nevrithian Empire can coexist. We have much to offer each other." Her gaze softened just slightly, but only for a moment. "We shall see," she replied cryptically. The room fell into silence as Seraphine turned, gesturing for him to follow. "We will begin negotiations now. But remember, human, your every move will be scrutinized. One mistake and you'll wish you never set foot on this planet." Darius took a deep breath, following her through the hall. As they walked, the weight of the moment pressed on him. He wasn't just here to secure a treaty, he was here to survive. The Nevrithians didn't take failure lightly. In their eyes, failure was a death sentence. And Seraphine, she was the executioner. As they entered the meeting room, Darius couldn't shake the feeling that everything about this encounter had already been decided. The terms of the treaty would not be negotiated based on logic or reason. They would be decided by Seraphine's whims and by her mood. But there was something else, a nagging feeling at the back of his mind, something he couldn't explain. The door closed behind him, and Seraphine's voice broke the silence again. "If you want to succeed in this negotiation, human, you must understand one thing." Darius looked up, meeting her gaze without hesitation. "What's that, General?" She stepped closer, her eyes burning with intensity. "If you kiss me, human, I will kill you." Her words hung in the air, thick and heavy, like a declaration of war. And for a moment, Darius didn't know how to respond. But he didn't flinch. He didn't back away. Instead, he met her gaze steadily, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "I'm not afraid of death, Seraphine," he said, his voice low and calm. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. The challenge was unmistakable, and the game had just begun. The large, ornate doors of the negotiation chamber closed behind Captain Darius Wells with a heavy thud, sealing him inside with the notorious Seraphine. The room was vast, with walls of dark stone lined with intricate Nevrithian designs, ancient symbols that Darius could not read. The low hum of distant machinery echoed in the background, the only sound in an otherwise eerily quiet room. Seraphine stood before the large, round table at the center of the room. Her silver hair shimmered in the dim light, and her armored figure was as imposing as a mountain. There was a sense of quiet power in the way she held herself, as if she were used to commanding armies, not simply negotiating with diplomats. Darius didn't sit right away. He remained standing, watching her closely, still unsure of how to handle the strange, dangerous woman before him. Her earlier warning, "If you kiss me, human, I will kill you," echoed in his mind like a drumbeat, making his heart race faster than he would have liked. The tension in the room was thick, like the air just before a storm. He needed to stay focused. He was here on a mission. This was important. The treaty would determine humanity's future relations with the Nevrithians, and there was no room for failure. Still, he couldn't ignore the growing curiosity inside him about Seraphine. Her eyes, cold and calculating, hid something deeper, something he couldn't quite place. Darius knew that fear was a powerful tool in any negotiation, and Seraphine wielded it like a sword. But he wasn't afraid, not of her, not yet. He had faced dangerous situations before, even within his own species, but none quite like this. Seraphine's gaze never left him as she stood with her back straight, poised like a predator about to strike. "Sit," she said sharply, her voice low and commanding. Darius didn't hesitate. He took a seat across from her, matching her intensity with his own. He could feel the weight of her stare, as if she were dissecting him with her eyes, searching for any sign of weakness. But he gave none. His body language was relaxed, even if his mind was anything but. "Let us begin," Seraphine said, her voice cutting through the silence. "The Nevrithian Empire has no need for petty diplomacy. We are a people of action. We do not speak lightly of alliances, and we do not make concessions." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "What makes you think humanity deserves a place at the table?" Darius leaned forward, keeping his tone calm and measured. "The Nevrithians are a powerful and respected empire. Humanity understands that, but we also know that strength alone isn't enough. Your people may be feared across the galaxy, but that doesn't mean you should stand alone forever. The universe is changing. And if you want to maintain your position, you need allies. You need us." She narrowed her eyes at him, her gaze calculating. "You speak of alliances as if they are simple agreements, as if they are mere words on a piece of paper. But you are wrong, human. Alliances are forged in battle, in blood. They are earned, not given. And you're kind. You have yet to prove that you can stand on your own." The sharpness in her voice sent a chill through the room, but Darius didn't flinch. He knew she was testing him, pushing him to see how he would react under pressure. "We've fought our own battles," he said, his voice firm. "But this isn't about past wars. This is about the future. The galaxy is full of enemies, Seraphine. Enemies that even the Nevrithian Empire will have trouble facing alone. We can be a force to be reckoned with together." Seraphine didn't respond immediately. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving him. Darius could feel the weight of her scrutiny, as if she were studying every inch of his being, searching for a crack in his composure. "You talk about the future," she finally said, her tone softer now, though still tinged with suspicion. "But can humanity be trusted? Your species has a history of betrayal, of breaking promises. How do I know that you won't abandon us when the time comes?" Darius met her gaze without hesitation. "Because we're not like that anymore. Humanity has changed. We've learned from our mistakes and we're willing to prove it. If you give us the chance, Seraphine, we will stand by you not just in war but in peace. We'll be the ally you need." She studied him for a long time, her face unreadable. Then with a small shake of her head, she chuckled softly. "You truly believe your words will change anything, don't you, human?" "I do," Darius said, his voice unwavering, "because actions will follow." For the first time, Seraphine's expression shifted. There was a flicker of something, amusement perhaps, or maybe even respect in her eyes. She didn't speak for a moment, instead taking a long, slow breath. The silence stretched between them, thick and charged. Then, unexpectedly, she stood. Darius blinked, unsure of what was happening. Was the negotiation over? Was she about to end it, to throw him out of the room in defeat? But Seraphine didn't move toward the door. Instead, she walked around the table, circling him like a lion stalking its prey. Her movements were slow, deliberate. He couldn't help but follow her with his eyes, watching her every step. "You think you can stand with us, human?" she asked softly, almost as if to herself. "You think you are strong enough to be more than just an insect in the vastness of the galaxy?" Darius didn't answer immediately. He wasn't sure what she was looking for. He had already spoken his piece, and now it was up to Seraphine to decide whether to believe him. But as she stopped behind him, close enough that he could feel her presence looming over him, he couldn't help but feel a slight unease. Seraphine's voice was almost a whisper now. "You are right about one thing, human. Humanity's strength lies not just in your technology or your armies. No, your strength is in your ability to never give up, to keep pushing forward no matter the odds. You may be foolish, but you are also relentless." Darius didn't speak, unsure of how to respond to her cryptic words. But before he could gather his thoughts, Seraphine's voice turned sharp again. "Don't think for a moment that this means I trust you. I don't trust anyone, especially not you. But if you think you can prove yourself, prove it. Show me what humanity is capable of, Captain Wells, and maybe, just maybe, I will consider your offer." She turned sharply, making her way to the door. But before she exited, she paused, glancing over her shoulder. "Oh, and human," she said, her voice colder than ever. "Don't forget my warning. If you kiss me, I will kill you. That I promise." With that, she left, the door sliding shut behind her with a soft hiss, leaving Darius alone in the room, his mind swirling with thoughts and possibilities. The conversation had taken a strange turn, but he wasn't sure if it was for better or worse. The tension between them was palpable, the unspoken challenge hanging in the air. Darius knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The real battle had just begun, and in the back of his mind, a thought kept nagging at him. What would happen if I kissed her anyway? The hours passed in a blur after Seraphine's departure, and Captain Darius Wells found himself lost in thought, pacing around the quiet negotiation chamber. The weight of his words, the tension of their encounter, and the challenge she had left hanging in the air seemed to press down on him. He couldn't help but replay her warning over and over in his mind. "If you kiss me, human, I will kill you." What had she meant by that? Was it a test, a threat, or something deeper, something that even she herself didn't fully understand? Darius had faced many challenges in his life, but this was different. He had never encountered anyone like Seraphine before. She wasn't just a warrior or a diplomat. She was a force of nature, unyielding and relentless. Yet beneath that impenetrable armor there was a flicker of something human, something real. He could feel it even if she didn't show it. But he had a job to do. The treaty was more important than any personal curiosity. Humanity needed allies in this vast, dangerous galaxy, and the Nevrithians were the key to that. If he could secure this alliance, he would have done something no one had thought possible. It was a mission he couldn't afford to fail. Darius was still contemplating these thoughts when the doors to the chamber slid open again, and Seraphine reappeared. Her presence was commanding, and it was as if the room itself shifted to make way for her. She didn't speak at first, simply standing there, her eyes cold as they locked with his. "I've thought about your offer," Seraphine said after a long silence, her voice as hard as steel. "And I'm not impressed by words, Captain Wells. You claim your species has changed, but words mean nothing. I need to see action, your strength, your resolve." Darius didn't say anything at first, knowing that this was her way of testing him. It was clear that she wasn't interested in his words anymore. She was interested in seeing what he could do, what humanity could do when faced with a challenge. "I understand," he said, his voice steady, "and I'm ready to show you, General. What do you have in mind?" Seraphine's lips curled into a faint smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "You will prove yourself human, you will face the trial." "The trial?" Darius repeated, frowning. "What trial?" Her smile disappeared, replaced by a look of pure intensity. "The Nevrithian trial is ancient, Captain Wells. It is the only way to prove oneself worthy of an alliance with our people. Only the strongest survive it." Darius felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of trial was she talking about? And why was she so certain he would fail? "There are no weapons involved," Seraphine continued, as if reading his thoughts. "No armies. This trial is a test of endurance, of will. You will face the trial alone. No one can help you. And if you survive, then perhaps, just perhaps, I will consider your offer." Darius stared at her, his heart pounding in his chest. This was more than a negotiation now. This was a challenge, one that could either make or break everything he had worked for. "I accept," he said without hesitation, surprising even himself. His voice was firm, his gaze unwavering. "I will face your trial." Seraphine studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without another word, she turned and walked toward the far side of the room. The doors opened automatically at her approach, and she stepped into the darkness beyond. Darius followed, determined not to show any weakness. He had no idea what this trial would entail, but he was ready for whatever came his way. The hallways of the Nevrithian palace were vast and winding, lit only by the soft glow of strange, glowing stones embedded in the walls. The air smelled faintly of incense, and the only sound was the soft echo of their footsteps as they walked in silence. Eventually, they reached a large, circular chamber, its floor made of polished black stone. In the center of the room stood a raised platform, surrounded by a deep pit. The walls were lined with hundreds of Nevrithian soldiers, all watching in silence, their eyes cold and calculating. Seraphine stood at the edge of the platform and turned to face Darius. "This is the trial," she said, her voice echoing in the large chamber. "You will stand on this platform and face your greatest fear. You will be tested, body and mind. There is no way to prepare. You either survive or you die." Darius felt his pulse quicken. What kind of trial was this? And what would he face here in front of all these Nevrithian warriors? Seraphine's eyes bored into him, waiting for him to back down. But he didn't. He was a soldier, a diplomat, and he had faced danger before. This was just another obstacle to overcome. Without another word, Darius stepped onto the platform. It was cold beneath his feet, and he could feel the eyes of every Nevrithian soldier on him, their gazes sharp and unyielding. The ground beneath him trembled slightly, and he braced himself for whatever came next. The chamber fell silent, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. And then, suddenly, the floor opened up beneath him. Darius didn't have time to react before he was plunged into darkness. He fell, the air rushing past him in a blur, and he couldn't tell which way was up. For a moment there was nothing, only the sensation of falling through endless space. And then, with a sudden jolt, he hit the ground. Pain shot through his body, but he forced himself to stay still, gathering his bearings. His eyes scanned the darkened space around him, but he couldn't see anything. It was pitch black, and the air smelled stale and damp. What kind of trial was this? What had Seraphine meant by facing his greatest fear? His mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. He could hear faint whispers in the dark, voices, perhaps, or the sound of his own breath echoing off the walls. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, until they were almost unbearable. They were mocking him, taunting him, his deepest insecurities coming to life in the shadows. "You're not strong enough," one voice hissed. "You'll never survive." "You'll fail," another voice said. "Everyone will see how weak you really are." The whispers grew louder and more frantic until Darius felt his heart pounding in his chest. They were getting to him. The doubts, the fear, they were all rushing in, clouding his thoughts. But he couldn't give in. He couldn't. He had to prove himself to her, to humanity, to the galaxy. With a forceful breath, Darius pushed the voices aside, focusing on the present. He couldn't let his fear control him. He was a diplomat, a captain, and he had a mission to complete. His eyes slowly adjusted to the darkness, and he saw a faint light in the distance. It was small, barely visible, but it was there. He took a step toward it, his muscles aching from the fall, but he didn't stop. The whispers continued, but he ignored them. Step by step, he moved closer to the light, and then suddenly the whispers stopped. The light before him grew brighter, and he realized that he was no longer alone. Standing before him was a shadowy figure, its face obscured by a hood. The figure's presence was overwhelming, and Darius felt the weight of its gaze on him. The figure stepped forward, and in that moment Darius knew it was his own fear that he was facing. His deepest fear brought to life, but he wasn't afraid anymore. He was ready to face it head-on. Darius stood in the dark, his heart still pounding from the fall. His eyes had finally adjusted to the faint light ahead, but it was the figure standing in front of him that truly caught his attention. It was cloaked in shadows, its features obscured, yet there was no mistaking the overwhelming presence it carried. The air around it seemed charged, thick with power. He felt an icy chill crawl up his spine, but he fought it down. His training as a captain and diplomat had taught him how to face danger, how to keep his composure. This, whatever this was just another test. A test of his will, his resolve. He stepped forward, his boots crunching against the cold, hard ground. With each step, the whispers from the darkness grew louder again. The voices from before, those that had tried to bring doubt into his mind, seemed to return, echoing in his ears. "You're not strong enough," one hissed again. "You can't face this. You'll fail just like the others," another voice jeered. Darius gritted his teeth, refusing to listen. This wasn't real. He wasn't going to let his fear control him, not when so much was at stake. He had a duty, and he would not let his own mind betray him. The figure in front of him stepped closer, its movements fluid, almost ghostly. It was tall, its presence looming over him like a dark cloud. Despite its form, Darius felt no anger or malice, only the weight of the trial, the weight of his own self-doubt. He took another step, forcing himself to meet the figure's presence. The whispers stopped abruptly, and for a moment there was only silence. Darius couldn't see its face, but he could feel its gaze upon him, as if it was watching him with an intensity that could pierce through to his soul. "You've come far, human," the figure spoke, its voice deep, almost echoing in the chamber. It was not a voice Darius recognized, but it felt familiar in an unsettling way. "But you are still weak. You have not yet learned the true meaning of strength." Darius swallowed, the words weighing on him. He wasn't sure what the figure meant, but he couldn't let it throw him off course. "Strength isn't just about power," he said, his voice steady despite the growing tension in the air. "Strength is about will. About standing up when everything tells you to fall." The figure tilted its head, as if considering his words. "Will is important, yes," it said slowly, "but will alone will not be enough to carry you. What you face here, human, is not just a test of your mind, but of your spirit. You must confront the truth of who you are, your fears, your limitations. Only then can you be truly free." Darius felt the weight of those words sink in, but he didn't let them shake him. He had spent his life proving that he could stand up to challenges. He had learned the hard way that true strength came from facing what scared him most, not from running away. The figure moved again, closer this time. Darius felt the air grow colder as it neared. He stood his ground, determined to face whatever was coming. He knew he had to pass this trial, whatever it took. This was his chance to show Seraphine and the Nevrithian Empire that humanity was capable of more than they expected. The figure stopped just in front of him, still shrouded in darkness. "What are you afraid of, Captain Wells?" the figure asked, its voice a low, haunting whisper. Darius took a deep breath. He knew the answer to that question. He had known it for a long time. "I'm afraid of failure," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid of letting people down, afraid of being useless when the stakes are too high." The figure seemed to nod as if it understood. "And yet, here you are, standing before me. Willing to face your fears, even though you know what they could cost you." Darius didn't respond. He couldn't put into words what he felt. He had always feared failure, but now, in the face of the trial, he realized something. Fear didn't have to control him. It could fuel him. It could drive him to push harder, to fight harder, to rise above it all. "You think you can overcome your fear?" the figure asked, its tone mocking. "You think your willpower is enough?" "I don't think," Darius replied, his voice steady. "I know." The figure let out a low laugh, a sound that sent chills through Darius's bones. "We shall see." And then, in an instant, everything around him shifted. The ground beneath his feet cracked, the air thickened, and the darkness deepened. The world seemed to twist and distort, and Darius felt as though he were being pulled in every direction at once. His heart raced as he struggled to keep his balance, his mind spinning as the landscape changed around him. The whispers returned louder than ever, filling his mind with doubts and fears. "You're not strong enough. You'll never survive. You'll fail them all." Darius stumbled but caught himself, his eyes scanning the shifting environment. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and his vision blurred. It was as if the very essence of his doubts had come to life, manifesting in the darkness around him. And then he saw it. Out of the shadows, a monstrous figure emerged, larger than anything he had seen before, its eyes burning with an eerie light. It was a creature born of his darkest fears, a manifestation of everything he had ever been afraid of. Its claws were long and razor-sharp, its teeth glistening in the dim light. Darius froze for a moment, feeling the weight of the fear pressing down on him. It was exactly what he had feared would come to life. The creature was the embodiment of his deepest anxieties, the thing he had always dreaded most. But then something shifted inside him. The doubt, the fear, they were real, but they didn't have to control him. He had faced death before. He had survived battles that seemed impossible. He had fought against enemies that were stronger, faster, more ruthless than he was. But he had always kept fighting. Darius took a step forward, his eyes locking onto the creature. "I'm not afraid of you," he muttered under his breath. "Not anymore." The creature snarled, its eyes narrowing in fury. It lunged at him with incredible speed, but Darius was ready. He sidestepped just in time, his body moving instinctively. The creature crashed into the ground with a roar, and Darius didn't waste a second. He grabbed a nearby rock and swung it at the beast, knocking it back. It snarled again, but this time Darius didn't hesitate. He attacked, his movements sharp and quick. The creature's claws scraped against his armor, but he kept moving, kept fighting. Every strike, every blow was fueled by his will, his desire to prove himself. The creature was just a shadow of his own fears, and he wasn't going to let it defeat him. The battle seemed to last forever, the creature relentless in its attacks. But Darius fought back, his resolve hardening with each moment. He had faced his fear, and now he was conquering it. His strength wasn't in his power or his weaponry. It was in his will to keep moving, to keep fighting, no matter how dark things seemed. Finally, with one last, decisive blow, the creature disappeared into the shadows, vanishing as quickly as it had come. The room fell silent again, and Darius stood there, panting, his chest heaving with exhaustion. The darkness faded, and the trial was over. Darius couldn't help but feel a sense of victory. He had faced his fears, and he had won. But the true test was yet to come. The Nevrithians were watching him, waiting to see if he had what it took to earn their trust. And Scifi, she would be the final judge. Darius stood in the center of the dark chamber, his chest heaving with exhaustion. His body was battered, bruised, and covered in sweat, but he had done it. He had faced his fear, the dark creature born of his deepest anxieties, and defeated it. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was a moment of silence, a pause that allowed him to breathe. The air around him seemed to calm, the oppressive weight of the trial lifting slowly. The dark shadows that had once surrounded him now seemed to retreat into the corners of the room, leaving him alone in the stillness. But this was not over. He knew it. The Nevrithian warriors still lined the walls, watching him with silent, calculating eyes. And Scifi, she had been watching him too, waiting to see if he would survive this trial, if he had proven himself worthy. Darius looked around, taking in the solemn faces of the Nevrithian soldiers. Their expressions were unreadable, and for a moment he felt the weight of their gaze. The challenge had been hard, but it wasn't just his strength that had been tested. It was his spirit, his resolve. It was everything that made him human. A low hum began to fill the air, signaling the end of the trial. The shadows around him seemed to shift once more, and before he knew it, the platform beneath his feet began to rise. Slowly, it lifted him back to the surface, to the place where it had all begun. When he reached the top, Scifi was waiting for him. She stood with her arms crossed, her gaze as intense as ever, but there was something different in the way she looked at him now. It was as if she had seen something she hadn't expected, a respect, perhaps even an acknowledgement of his strength. "You did it," Scifi said, her voice low and steady. "You survived." Darius wiped the sweat from his brow, still catching his breath. "I had no choice," he replied, his voice raw but firm. "I couldn't fail, not when so much is at stake." Seraphine didn't speak for a moment. She simply studied him, her eyes scanning him from head to toe as if trying to decipher every last detail. The silence stretched between them, thick with tension. Finally, she stepped forward, her movements graceful and measured. "You showed strength, Captain Wells," she said, her voice carrying a new tone, one of approval. "Not just physical strength, but mental and emotional strength. You faced your fear and you overcame it. You fought not just for survival, but for something greater." Darius felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had done it. He had earned her respect. But he also knew this wasn't the end of the road. This trial was only the beginning. He had proven himself worthy of an alliance with the Nevrithians, but that didn't guarantee success. It didn't guarantee that the treaty would be signed, or that humanity would be accepted into the fold of their empire. Seraphine turned away from him and walked toward the far side of the chamber, her armor clicking softly with each step. Darius followed her, unsure of what to expect next. She stopped at a large stone table, and for the first time she gestured for him to sit. "Sit, Captain. Let us finish what we started." Darius sat down across from her, his mind still racing from the intensity of the trial. He had faced the worst of his fears and survived. Now all he had to do was complete the negotiation, but Seraphine's next words took him by surprise. "You've earned something today," she said, her voice softening. "You've earned the right to be heard." Darius blinked, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean?" "I mean that we, the Nevrithians, value strength above all else, but not just strength in battle, strength in mind, in spirit, in conviction. You've shown us that you possess all of these things. And for that, you have earned my respect." Darius felt a surge of pride, but he quickly tamped it down. He couldn't afford to become complacent. He had come this far, but he still had to finish the job. "So, the treaty?" he asked, his voice steady. "Will the Nevrithian Empire agree to the terms?" Seraphine turned to face him, her expression unreadable. For a long moment she said nothing. The room felt heavy, filled with an uncomfortable silence. Darius waited, his heart racing as he tried to read her face. Finally she spoke. "The treaty will be signed, Captain Wells," Seraphine said, her voice calm. "But not because of your words, not because of your promises." Darius's heart sank for a moment. Had all of his effort been for nothing? "No," Seraphine continued, her gaze steady. "The treaty will be signed because you showed us your true strength. You proved to us that humanity is more than just a race of words and diplomacy. You showed us that you can face your fears and survive. That is why we will stand with you." Darius felt a sense of relief flood through him, and for the first time since he had arrived on Nevrith, he allowed himself to relax. It was over. The treaty would be signed. Humanity had a place in the galaxy, and the Nevrithians would be their allies. Seraphine stepped forward, her expression softening ever so slightly. "You've earned your place here, Captain Wells," she said. "But remember this, trust is not given lightly. You will have to continue proving yourself both to us and to the galaxy." Darius nodded. He understood. The road ahead would not be easy, but this was a start. He had faced his own fears, and in doing so he had secured humanity's future. As Seraphine turned to leave, Darius stood up. "Thank you, General," he said, his voice sincere, "for the opportunity, for believing in us." Seraphine paused for just a moment, her back still turned. Then, without looking at him, she spoke. "Thank you, human," she said quietly, "for showing us that sometimes strength is not in the battle, but in the will to keep going." And with that, she walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Darius stood in the now silent chamber, the weight of the moment settling in. It had been a hard, long journey, one filled with challenges, fears, and doubts. But in the end, he had done it. He had proven himself. And humanity had earned its place among the stars.